Good evening, everybody in the virtual Zoom world. Tonight is Tuesday, May 26th, 2020. We're meeting virtually, and this is a meeting of the Finance Committee. It's 6:01 p.m. I'd like to call the roll. Mr. Ballin?
I'm here.
Mr. Fury?
Here.
All right. So we have all three members of the Finance Committee here this evening. We also have the majority of council. I believe we are waiting for Ms. McPherron, but we also are joined by Mayor Ted Yates, Law Director Dave Maestros, and our Finance Director Sarah Butchie-Gross. Moving on to item number 2 on the agenda is audience participation. Mark or Shannon, do we have anyone this evening?
We do not have anyone signed up.
All right. That moves us right along to item number 3 on the agenda, the clubhouse note. Ms. Butchie-Gross, I believe this is you.
Yes, it is. Thank you. So we had a meeting last week with bond counsel and our municipal bond advisor. And right now they're just advising us to hold on making any decisions just yet on the clubhouse note until after summer break, just to see how things progress with COVID-19 and the markets. So right now we're just in a bit of a holding pattern until we make some final decisions on that debt.
Sarah, when are they suggesting we hold until?
When we come back from break, and I think it's the second meeting in July, we come back, I should have some more information. I'll keep in touch with Matt and Mike over the summer.
Okay, and then is the idea then that we would act at that point?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The idea is at that time we have a little bit more information, and we can either schedule Matt Stu to come back out and talk with us and let us know where the markets are at, but we do have enough time to either issue the bond or issue a note if we wait through the summer to see how things develop.
Okay, for me, I would like if he were there, if that's possible. It doesn't necessarily need to be that first meeting back, but before we would act on anything, I would like for him to present to us again, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's definitely the idea. It's just a matter of if we're ready to go make those decisions if we have the information that we need at that first meeting or not, but we'll definitely have him back either way.
Sarah, just to clarify that it'll be the first or second meeting in August. Right.
Oh, okay, sorry. Second meeting in August.
Any further discussion on the clubhouse note? Okay. That moves us on to item number 4. Sarah, you're still the star of the show. The 2019 CAFR and audit.
I just wanted to give Finance Committee an update. We are planning on doing a CAFR this year. Essentially what that is it's our normal audited financial statements with a lot more data. It has 10 years of historical data and some more information about the Twinsburg community as well. I think it'll be helpful for the residents. There's a lot more readable information in those CAFRs, and you also have the ability to turn it into a public-facing report called a PAFR, where you can do, a video, or people get creative with those. So we're still on pace to do that. The state of Ohio did extend the audited financial deadline to the end of June. At this time, I think we're on pace to do that. It's just going to depend on how things move along with the auditors.
Gotcha. Comments, questions, or concerns? Mr. Ballin, Mr. Fury?
No,
Sir.
Any other members of council on the CAFR? Okay.
no.
Item number 5 is the performance audit completion and anticipated release date.
So this is just one last update for finance. The performance audit is complete. We have held the exit conference and we have turned in our performance audit response letter from the city regarding the auditor's recommendations and some of the information that they included in the report. At this time, the anticipated release date is by June 9th. And I believe the auditors are going to be on council's agenda on June 9th to present that report.
Great.
I just wanted to give you the update on that one.
Very good. All right, Sarah, are they, and I don't know if we are planning on being back in council chambers for that meeting or not. Do you know if we are, will they be there, or will they be remote?
Lori, I'm sure would probably be able to be in person. Nicole, I'm not as sure because she's coming from Columbus, but Lori's up here in Northeast Ohio, so she could make it whether it's Zoom or in person. I do have an email out to Nicole to see if she would still be able to make it. Either way, they'll be able to do the presentation. We just might have to make another option for Nicole to be able to log in.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion from Mayor or Dave, members of council, anyone on the performance audit?
Nothing.
All right, hearing nothing. We'll move on to item number 6. This is the 2020 tax year, 2021 collection year tax budget discussion.
So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here again. Again, same thing if you want to move your pictures over to the left so that it doesn't block the slides.
There we go.
And can everybody see okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is a continuation of the discussion that we had at the Finance Committee meeting. What we're looking at for the implementation of the 4.9 mils that we have been discussing is a phased-in approach. So on this year's tax budget, which is for the 2020 tax year, but not collected until 2021, we're looking at essentially doing half and half. This year, we would put on 2.4 mils, which would be collected next year. And that 2.4 would be the piece for police and fire pensions that we've been talking about, and the piece for safety services capital expenses. Now, at the same time that those pieces would go on to folks' tax bills, we would have a reduction in the parkland voted debt millage that is out there. It's going to go from 1.3 to about 0.3. And the reason that that is being reduced is because in 2021, we have our final payment on that debt. And so the normal debt payment is a little over $800,000 each year. And our last payment is only about $170,000. So that millage for that debt is going to go down at the same time that we're adding on some millage in some other areas. So at the end of the day, the net increase that folks will see on next year's bill is 1.4 mils. And a little later on in the presentation, we'll get into what that means in dollars and cents. So then the following year would be the other piece that we've been discussing, which is the operating expenses for safety and service departments, the 2.5 mils. And again, that very last 0.3 of a mil is going to fall off because we will have made the last payment on that debt the year before. So the net increase that year will be 2.2. Everybody following along okay? I know it's a lot of back and forth.
You know, one more time. So let's say that one more time, will you please, Sarah?
Sure. So I just backed up a slide there so that you can see what we're talking about on this year's tax budget, which would not be collected until next year, where it's a 1.4 mil net increase. And just real shortly, we'll get into what the cost is on that. And then the following year, the net increase would be 2.2. So altogether, we're losing 1.3 of the voted parkland debt millage. And we're adding on 4.9 mils for city operational expenses. So at the end of the day, it's a 3.6 increase for city collections.
Over a 2-year period.
Okay.
So it would be collected in 21 and 22 years, nothing this year for 2020.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so just to recap what we just talked about, here it is compared 2021 to 2022. That 1.4 net increase for collecting in 2021 and that 2.2 net mill increase in 2022. And you can see down towards the bottom of each, it shows the dollar amount per month that would cost on a $100,000 home value. Now, we know that that's not the average home value in Twinsburg, so I do have tables in here that we'll get to in just a second that will show by month and by year on different home values.
Just so anybody watching understands then, and let me make sure I'm clear on a $100,000 home for 2021, that means a $49 per year increase or $4.08 per month. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then the following year in 2022 on a $100,000 home, you're talking $35 a year. Or no, you're talking $77 a year.
You got it.
Okay.
And I think the next couple tables we look at will be a little bit easier for you to look at, especially when we get to the total of the 2 years.
Okay.
So this is what we're looking at for 2021. So really, this line here, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but the
Right.
$250,000, that's more what we're looking at for here in Twinsburg for an average home value, right?
Okay.
So if you look for next year, the increase per month would be $10.21 on a typical Twinsburg home. And that's the net increase. So that's the difference, we're adding a little and we're taking a little as well.
So I would like to just clarify something. Home value, when I think of home value, is how much I would sell my house for. What the actual tax is based on is the appraised value by the Summit County Fiscal Office, which you can find on their website. Because, that nice lady that we talked to Maureen, you sent us, you forwarded an email from a nice lady named Mary that lived on Casmine Court. She was very concerned that this was going to be like prohibitively expensive. She thought her house was worth $250,000. Well, it's actually appraised at $157,000. So after you go through the discounts and everything, it was less than half of what she thought. So again, I think that some people think of what they think they can sell their house for. That's not the number that they pay taxes on. It's what it's what the county appraises it, and you can see those tax bills for everybody. They're public documents. You can look at anybody's houses, or if a resident has a question, you can actually do the math for them and tell them specifically what it would be if this would be implemented in their case. Thank you.
Yeah, and a little later on in the slide presentation, I have a table that shows this same information as far as home value goes and where the property tax money is going right now. So I think that'll be helpful for folks as well. And you can get all this information from Summit County's website. If you take a look at the where do my tax dollars go, is a good one. You can pick any community and any home value. So let's keep on going to 2022. So same situation. as the last slide. This is the one where we're really, you know, the average home value. So you're looking at $16 a month additional in 2022. And so that total increase over the course of the 2 years is going to be $26 a month.
Okay.
And that's the net increase with what we're going up and what's coming off of the city collections.
Sarah, am I on?
Yep.
So going back to what Bill said, so this number, the 250,000, that still is market value, not what our average assessed housing price is, right? Do we know what that number is?
The numbers that I've been researching, that's the average home value according to what I have found, but certainly we can do a little more digging and see if the Summit County can get us some information to get really down detailed. Because you're right, it could be somewhere down around $200,000, the average home value. But we have all that information in these tables. So I think probably the best thing to do would be for folks to look up what their home value is and then find themselves in that table.
Yeah. I think generally the auditor's value is anywhere from 10 to 15, potentially 20% lower than what the market value would be on a typical home. Is generally what you end up seeing.
I agree.
So, I know that's the case with my house. I mean, I've looked at the auditor's value versus what I think the market value would be.
Okay.
So then we're just going to get into a few frequently asked questions that we have been getting from folks inside the city, residents, employees, leadership. And we do plan on having a frequently asked question fact sheet released sometime, hopefully this week, along with these presentations that we've been having. So the first question is this increase just in response to COVID-19? Because I think some of the concern out there is, you know, why are we looking to increase revenues when we're not quite sure what the COVID-19 impact is just yet, and that COVID-19 impact is not going to last forever?
Right.
And the quick answer to that is no, it's not in direct response to COVID-19. We have been talking about this for a few years now. The city is highly dependent on income tax. And I think what COVID-19 has done is maybe shed a little bit brighter light on that dependency that we have right now on income taxes. Because when there's fluctuations in the economy, you know, it hits income taxes a little bit quicker, or it can hit income tax a little bit quicker. Whereas property values, especially in a community like Twinsburg, they hold up a little bit better. And we can plan on having that revenue to support our safety and service departments, even through a pandemic or whatever may happen. So that is the reasoning behind looking at property tax. It's not in direct response to COVID-19. Our direct response to COVID-19, however, on the bottom half of your slide there, shows some of the things that council and leadership have done or are considering in order to make it through 2020 based on what our anticipated revenue impact is. We're already considering over $1 million in capital and infrastructure. That is on council's agenda already. We have already limited seasonal and part-time hiring. We already initiated a layoff of 20% of full-time staff. We have brought some of those folks back this month as we started opening things up under the governor's orders. We have reduced overtime in our departments, even in safety services. And we are talking through a full-time hiring freeze for non-safety personnel unless we have council approval to refill those roles. Does anybody have any questions about this?
Not necessarily about the COVID response, but as I was looking through my notes there, I did have one extra question.
Of course.
Do you know when we're looking at home values, if somebody is in between one of those ranges, are they rounding up or are they rounding down?
Oh, we can help someone do that math. There wouldn't be any rounding.
Okay.
They're going to pay, you know, they don't round to the nearest $50,000 on your tax bill. You get taxed on what your home value is.
Gotcha.
So you would fall somewhere in between those lines.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah,
No
multiply
problem.
3.5 times whatever $1,000 worth of value their house is.
Okay.
Sorry to backtrack.
No, you're fine. So another common question or concern that we have gotten is that, you know, people are not necessarily very sure where their property tax dollars are going right now. If you take a look at this table, say if you look at the very bottom line on a $500,000 home, that person
I think I lost everybody. I can't.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
think we lost Sarah. I think we lost Sarah.
We lost you, Sarah.
Oh,
There you are.
This is a great chart. Thank you, Sarah.
can you see me now? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I never left. So what I was saying is if we just look at that bottom line on the $500,000 home,
Mhm.
they're paying a little over $10,000 in property taxes. The city is getting $300 of that. So essentially the city gets 3 cents on the dollar right now of property tax. The bigger piece of that going to the parkland voted debt that is going to be rolling off. Does anybody have any questions about this chart?
It's a great chart. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nope.
So actually, just so I'm clear, the $300 today, a majority of that is going to park debt. So in reality, there's only like on a $500,000 home, what, like $60 that comes to the city for the police and fire pension.
Yeah, I'd have to do the math real quick. We get 1.9 mils and 1.3 of that is going to the parkland debt.
Okay.
And this chart shows annual numbers, not halves, like we were looking at. If you see on the text, this is the annual number, not the half year number.
Yeah, this has all been annual numbers. Yeah, we've been working in full year. And this is the law director. This is Dave's chart. I just stole it and made it prettier. So.
Yeah, and I just say for clarification, 2/3 of that, 66% of that is the parkland debt of each of those numbers. So of the top column, the $60.17, the $40 of that is for the park.
Thanks. I didn't have my calculator near me, and I didn't want to do that math in my head.
So for residents listening, at $60, 40 is the park. So for $20, they get trash pickup, leaf pickup, branch pickup, and everything else we do, right?
Yeah.
That's all we pay
On
on.
That $20 only goes to police fire pensions.
Oh, okay.
It only goes to police fire pensions. Any money that we get in right now on property taxes besides that voted parkland debt is police fire pension, and that's the only place that it can go. It's the only place it does go.
Okay.
Yeah. So the bottom number, I think it's $94 that they pay for police and fire pension. The rest of it goes toward park debt, which is rolling off next year.
Okay.
But that's out of over a $10,000 tax bill.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. All right. So let's move on. So this is another big question is why isn't this going to vote? So charter millage is something that is done councilmatically. It is in the charter that was voted by the people, up to 7 mills. The state of Ohio allows up to 10, but our charter limits council even further down to 7. That charter is reviewed every 5 years by residents, and council votes on our charter millage through the tax budget every year. So over the course of the last few decades, you know, council has reviewed this every year, and we have been able to move through some pretty downward times when Revco and Chrysler left. And they have done their best to use this charter millage appropriately. And that is, I think, the case in this year and next year, as this is an appropriate use of charter millage. It is to stabilize safety and service. And, you know, council is doing this with compassion for how it is hitting the residents. And they're doing it for something that is a need for the city. These are needs, not wants. So that is the charter millage discussion. Right now, council has only used 0.6, which is the state minimum. They can't go any lower out of that 7 available charter mills.
Okay.
Any questions here?
No.
Okay. So this last question is, maybe the law director can jump in here again, because he knows a bit more about the golf course history than I do. But a question we've been getting a lot is, why doesn't the city just sell the golf course and take that money and use it instead of, you know, any kind of increase in revenue anywhere else? And essentially the answer is we can't. That's not how the arrangement, the contract with the golf course worked. Dave, do you want to jump in on that one?
Sure.
Dave, I think you went mute again.
Can you hear me now?
Yep,
good
there
now.
you go.
Yes.
Okay. Some of you were aware of the terms back, you know, when the golf course was purchased, and the deed that was entered between the homeowners association, at that time called the Ethan Commons Homeowners Association, and I want to say, was it Sunrise Development, I believe, was the property owner and developer out there, provided that there was a reversionary interest in that golf course, meaning that if the city chooses to sell it, it reverts back to the homeowners association. All that property reverts back to the homeowners association, and then ultimately it would be up to the homeowners association what they choose to do with it. Either maintain it as a golf course and try to operate it, or turn it into parkland, or whatever it might be, or sell it to another entity. But it would revert to the HOA for their use, and there is not a provision in the deed that the city would recoup any of its costs that they've put into that golf course, which have been significant over the last 5-6 years. So that's the long and short of it, is the deed restriction, and that's of record of the 1997 deed on the transfer of that property.
And then, so the bottom portion of this slide is, we are aware of the concern of the residents, some residents, about the clubhouse, and we have taken steps. The RFP, the request for proposal, has been issued for that restaurant space in the building. And so the city's looking for a partner there. And we have also reduced full-time staffing in both the golf maintenance and the golf clubhouse areas. And any other questions there?
No.
All right. And that is, unless anybody wants to go back and look at any of those slides or charts, that is what I have for tonight.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Great.
So in speaking with everybody over the last week or so regarding this, thought this would be a good opportunity for people to just express comments, questions, or concerns. And again, I can start with the finance committee and then talk to members of council. But I mean, I would, I guess, like to kind of hear what people's thoughts are on this, and do my best to get something that we can present to council that can hopefully get the most support. So I guess I will start with members of the finance committee as they appear on my screen. So Mr. Fury, you would be your thoughts, sir.
Well, nobody likes to raise taxes, but I think that in the work that we've done the last 2 years, in conjunction with the performance audit and the mayor and the staff, to reduce both our costs, our head count, and try to catch some efficiencies, that it's reasonable to reinstate the tax that was reduced in '97. I thought Joanne McFerrin's idea to split it up into two different years would allow to have some of the flexibility and the timing that was a concern to several members, including myself, as well as she did research on the homestead tax exemption, which can reduce senior citizens 65 and over or disabled individuals up to $25,000 off their property tax. And we could talk about that more later. But I thought that I see that there's a need. I think that by converting the 1.3 mills that are on the parkland now and maintaining them, and having a net increase of just 3.6 mills over 2 years is reasonable and a fair option, in my opinion. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ballin?
Yeah, I guess I would want to echo what Mr. Fury had to say. I have heard from probably more people about this than probably most issues since I've been on council. The overwhelming majority of the feedback that I have gotten was the timing of this thing, right? Most people understood that, or most people that had kind of had been following along and understanding what we've been doing over the last several years, understand that we have made significant changes to our budgeting process. We've made significant decreases on the expense side of the house, as Sarah alluded to, and then we've done additional things that Sarah has alluded to in response to COVID. The major concern that I've heard is the timing, right? And I think, again, as Mr. Fury said, nobody wants to be in a position to raise taxes. Nobody wants to be in a position to have increased taxes. But we love the Twinsburg that we live in, and it's all of these things that come along and are paid for, with these taxes. I think the multi-year plan addresses that main concern in terms of the timing of this, because I agree, the timing, there is not a worse time probably in history, right? So I agree with that. And so I think that this actually addresses it. I think the fact that the park bond is rolling off next year, I think is fortuitous in timing, and I think that will actually help to kind of lessen the burden as well. So,
thank you, Mr. Ballin. Mrs. Stauffer, you show up next on my screen. Any comments, questions, or concerns?
Well, I do, I certainly recognize the problem that we're having. And I think that this, I agree that this is a really great document. But obviously I have issues with this. we've been on council, I've been on council a long time, and we've had opportunities to do this, raise the inside millage before. And in all the years I've been on, I swore I would never support not taking it to the residents for a vote. I think this type of information would definitely help that in that way. I understand we don't want to do that, but I really think that given what we're going through right now, you know, many people have had their income affected by layoffs and furloughs and business closures. I think it's too soon to know the full impact of this pandemic on our national and local economy and our residents. Increasing taxes right now, even though it's minimal, without voter consent, I feel like it's very insensitive to our residents. I know we can do it. I just don't feel that this is the time to do it. What I would like to know, Sarah, on here, I didn't see if we only took the police and fire pension, you know, what was the parkland, and kind of rolled that into it. I don't know that we got a sheet on that, what that looks like. And again, this is not, I understand that these numbers are not big, but I also understand that I'm watching a lot of people who are very upset about the current situation, and I don't feel like I want to be part of something that makes it worse on them right now. So, I mean, again, there's no doubt that our city's under great financial pressure right now, but I just don't feel now's the time to rush to increase taxes on them right now without their consent. I just don't feel like this is the time to do it. And I would say that even as dysfunctional as our federal government can be during this crisis, even they appear to be united in recognizing that this is a time where we should be looking for ways to protect the financial future of citizens by not taking from them without asking. I feel like this is just not good timing all the way around. But again, I understand we have some things going on. A couple of other things. In all the time that we've been, historically in Twinsburg, have we ever raised or added taxes without the consent of the residents? I don't know the answer. I don't know if any of you guys do, but I don't want that to be what this council has recognized. The first time in Twinsburg's history during a national or a world pandemic, we raised taxes or even had this conversation. That's my opinion. That's what I'd like to seriously think about. And again, I would probably be more supportive of this just rolling over the parkland, kind of keeping it the same for now, and then put the difference on a ballot and let the residents vote. That's all. I guess that's all I have, or my opinion on that.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you very much. Mrs. Walker, you appear next on my screen. Comments, questions, concerns? Love to hear them.
Yeah, yes. I was reading this book, and it starts off with, this is the best of times and the worst of times. And I look at it as that's how the city of Twinsburg stands right now. We really need the millage. We really need our police and fire, because if it wasn't for them, I mean, I wouldn't want to live in a better place but the city of Twinsburg. And I think we're all doing a great job just milling this out and thinking about not only for ourselves, but for the betterment of the residents. And if they were in our place, what would they do? If they were elected, what would they do? My concern is too, why wasn't this done years ago, number one? You know, maybe 2012, 2016. I wasn't on council, and it wasn't brought up. I don't know. I've came to a lot of council meetings. I never heard anything about this. And I know we want to go with the 2.4 for 2021 and the 2.5 for 2022. Personally, I would like to break it down even more. I was willing to go, I think it was that 1.7. I was, that keeps sticking in my mind because it's a smaller amount for the residents. I think with the 4.9 all at once, I wouldn't vote for that. But I think if we reduced it to 1.7, I think they'll go for it. And then wait a year and then split the other balance half and half. But like the 2.4, and I did talk to some of you about that. Do I want to raise it? No, but I'm looking at what's better. Sometimes you have to weigh the residents and what's better for the city. And I think for police and fire, they help the whole city, regardless of where you live. We're not talking just a particular ward. They handle the whole ward. And right now, I'm still thinking about it. But if it was 1.7, I think our residents would go for that. So right now, I haven't made up my mind yet. I'm just toying and just thinking about it, whatever is better for them, and also for the other Ward 2 residents. And if this is what we need to do, then we just need to come together as a whole and just figure this thing out. And I think it's going to take time, not rush into the 2.4 for 2021, 2022. Let's take our time and let's go through this slowly. I just don't want it to come at me all at once and I have nothing to say about it. I do agree with Maureen about the residents want to know, even though I realize that this millage is just for our vote and not for the residents only. But I do need the residents to know exactly what we're thinking, what we're doing before we even agree to 2.4, 2.5, or 1.7 or whatever. So that's my opinion right now.
Thank you very much for sharing,
Thank
Ms.
you.
Walker. I appreciate it. Mr. Scafidi, you're next up, sir.
Thanks, Scott. Well, needless to say, at the last meeting when this was brought out from the Finance Committee and it was recommended to Council and there was going to be legislation appearing on our agenda tonight, that really didn't sit very well with me. It seemed rather surprising to me. Not that I didn't know that some discussions were being had, but I didn't know that it was there and coming out at us. So I didn't say anything at the last Finance Committee meeting or at the last meeting we had because I had to collect my thoughts. And it took me time to collect my thoughts. And, one thing that I've always prided myself in as an elected official is that in all the years, all my years serving in the other community, I've never raised any taxes on any residents without their approval. However, that doesn't mean that it would make it right that I didn't do it today if the need was there. And truthfully, I know that the need is there. There's no doubt in my mind. Sarah, I trust your numbers, completely. I trust what you're telling us. I trust the position that we're in. And I get it. And I could bend to that today and go along with this. But, when I look at it was 4.9 and there were no options on the table. Okay. So I've had some thinking to do in my head. And the things that came out to me were, these are the most challenging times we've ever been in, and they're so unpredictable for us and for all of the residents here in the city of Twinsburg. Unemployment's at an all-time high in Ohio. People are making decisions whether to pay a bill or to feed their families. The governor's asking mortgage companies and landlords to give breaks to people if they can, because they can't pay their bills right now, or they've lost their jobs, or they're temporarily out of work. The utility companies, the water company, it's been on TV, and I believe the illuminating company, they're doing no shutoffs right now for people that can't pay their bills, because they're being sensitive to the position that they're in. And for me to go ahead and just say, yeah, well, I hear all that, but I'm going to raise taxes here in Twinsburg. I'm going to vote to raise. I'm going to be one of those votes. That was very hard for me to take, and hard for me to swallow. So, all these things have been going through my mind, and I just thought it was a bad time. And what really goes through my mind, and I believe I mentioned this at the last meeting, is, one of the biggest mistakes that we've made here is we did it ourselves, is letting that 0.25% go back. Okay, we had that 0.25%. The residents gave it to us. We also had the opportunity to put it back on the ballot, and we said we would honor whatever they said. Well, of course, they took the 0.25% back, but not once then. And this isn't a brand new situation that we're dealing with today. This is something that we've all seen coming for a long time. Since Chrysler closed, we knew what direction we were going to be headed in. And so we got that 0.25%, and we did very well with it. We didn't get any credit for it, I might add. I think it was like 20 million we had in the bank, and we had our critics come into council meeting telling us that, all we did was take their money and we're storing it in the bank. No way did we get any credit for the stewards of the money. So
it was 30.
Pardon me?
It was 30. We had $32 million in the general fund at one point.
There you go. So it was even more. And we could have squandered that money away, but we didn't. We were very good stewards of the people's money, and we always have been. So, and then we let the 0.25% go back, but not once then, and we all knew where this was going to go. Eventually that money was going to chip away, and be gone. I wish we were this diligent then to go ahead and put it out there that we need this 0.25%. Please don't take it back. Here's what, let's educate the public on what's going on. So we didn't do that. And we could sit here and what if all day long and say whatever we want to say. And, we could have, would have, should have, but we didn't. Okay. So that's over with. But now we're in the middle of a global crisis. And I just find it difficult. It's just very difficult for me to swallow 4.9 mils to just add to the residents, at our whim, at our vote. So through all these conversations, and I know I've had this conversation with most of you, okay? And so where I stand. I'm talking to the public that may be out there and just trying to reiterate my thoughts that, in some of these conversations, it was floated out there a 1.4, okay, mil. And that would cover the police pension and the fire pension for our first responders. Let's cover them, and take some of the pressure off the city. All right. So at the time I said, well, let me think about that. That could be doable. I could probably understand that more, and I think the residents would understand that as well. So I did like that idea. However, I never got an opportunity to respond to that because things were changing so fast with this thing over the last 2 weeks. I didn't get a chance to respond. So now we fast forward to today, and we're looking at now it's 2.4 and in 2021 and 2.4 in 2022. Well, that still doesn't sit real well with me. The only thing that I can reconcile in my mind is the 1 mil that would be coming off for the parkland. Okay. So instead of 2.4 next year, we're looking at 1.4. And if I'm wrong, Sarah, tell me I'm wrong, but that's the way I'm seeing this right now. And the 1.4, like I said, when that was floated out there, I was pretty much willing to accept that. And I thought that would be somewhere and that was affordable. When you look at the numbers, and that was a big thing too. What's it going to cost the residents of $100,000 home, 250, 300, 500, what's that going to cost? And it was literally pennies. And some might say, well, what's pennies to you isn't pennies to us. And I understand that. I get that. But the fact that it wouldn't take effect until 2021, And we're still looking at basically, I think of it in my mind as 1.4 because that 1 mil will come off. I could probably live with that. You know, getting ready to present another 2.4 the following year. I mean, I don't know. That's something I'd still have to think about. I could probably, again, I would probably support maybe a 2.4 for 2021, knowing that park millage is coming off. But I don't know about the second year. I still have some thinking to do. As you guys know, I'm typically never real quick to respond to anything. I'm a processor. I like to process what I hear and think about what I feel is good for the community and the people living here. So I'd have to think about that. If this was all going to be rolled into one piece of legislation, then I don't know. I really have to think about it. But if it could be for next year, and it could be 2.4 and the 1 coming off, so it's really 1.4 in my mind. And Sarah, I'd like you to just confirm that when I'm done. Then I could probably go along with that. So that's all. I've been doing a lot of thinking and a lot of working on this, and you know, that's where I'm at with it right now. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Scafidi. Sarah, could you confirm for Mr. Scafidi that you have his numbers, please?
Yeah, he got the numbers right.
This number's right.
We'll have those slides out there for the public.
Okay. What'd you say, Bill? The numbers.
I said your numbers are correct.
Okay.
And Maureen, the millage that was reduced by 4.9 to 97 was councilmatic.
The millage that was reduced but not increased. Nothing was in.
It was set up originally councilmatically and then reduced councilmatically. It was inside millage.
But nothing has been increased.
First you increased it, then you decreased it, and we're talking about putting it back in place now. So yes, it wasn't done by an earlier council in the 70s.
Okay, I would like to find that out. So you're saying
Sure.
back in the 70s, they
Yep.
increased millage without voter consent?
The millage, the 4.9 mils that was set aside was the inside millage.
Inside millage voted
Inside
on by-
millage is inside millage. It doesn't go anywhere. It's not like it was no, it's not voted on. Inside millage means it's inside the city, inside. That's it.
Oh, so I'm sorry. So are you saying that we cannot put this on the ballot as saying that we
No.
want to increase inside millage? And we
put-
would like your, David, can you
I
confirm?
don't know about the legality of that. You could vote for instance, we voted for 1.3 mils for the park separately, but we still have inside millage that didn't take away from the seven mils or minus the 0.6 for the police and fire pensions. So we have inside millage. It's always inside. If you don't do it inside, it's still there. You can add additional things on the outside.
Okay, so the park that's coming off is outside millage?
Yes, because we voted on that.
Okay, I got you. Okay. So we're looking at, if we were to, if we did it without voter approval, it's inside millage, but if we ask the residents, it's called outside millage, and it's not even part of the amount that we can raise without their vote? Anyone confirm that?
Let me respond to that if I could.
Thanks.
Mrs. Stauffer, you're correct in the sense that if it's voted on, it is not charter millage, meaning that, let's say, just for a matter of round numbers, that we put 3 mils on and it was voted on, that does not change the 7 mils available to council on the charter millage, meaning that the parkland that was voted on, that was voted on and approved, that means that currently the city still has 6.4 mils of charter inside millage to use after we take off the 0.6 for police and fire that's on the books. Do you follow me?
Mm-hmm.
So the 1.3 that is on there for the parkland does not impact that charter millage.
Right.
Okay. So to look at this another way, that if you put this to vote, and let's say you put 4.9 mil to vote, the city would still have 6.4 mils of charter millage that they could pass councilmatically, even if the residents voted on that.
Can you write the legislation up to actually, so it's inside?
No.
The definition of the inside and the outside millage is the voting. So it's by definition would be outside of the charter millage if it's voted on. Okay, and that's the charter. The charter has granted council that power. It doesn't mean that council has to do it. It just means that if it's put to vote, it's not considered charter millage.
Right.
Okay.
So even if residents voted on any amount of millage, a future council could still enact councilmatically the inside millage. So that still is available.
That's horrible. Okay.
Got me. I said,
Go ahead, Mr. Scafidi.
just
Wait,
and the 2.4 that I'm looking at right now, the thing that I see about that, what makes it even more appealing, besides it only comes out to be 1.4 when it actually has to go on, is that where it's going. That we know that it's going to our first responders, our police and our fire, okay, by way of 0.7 and 0.7 to the to their pension funds, and then the other mill would be going towards their capital purchases in the future. So that makes that a little more appetizing to me as well, where it's going and where it's earmarked for. That's all. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Scafidi. Ms. McPherron, last but not least, I've been waiting to hear your thoughts. Please.
So I just want to start by that my idea of splitting from 2021 into 2022 is really just taking the recommendations of financing that we need to do something and we need this money, right? So, you know, I listened to everyone tonight and I just have questions that, you know, everyone says, no, some people have said that this is something that should have been done a long time ago, but it wasn't. You know, people are saying, well, they don't want to do this, but I don't hear any alternatives. The dollars and cents, again, nobody wants to raise taxes and no residents want higher taxes. But when you look at the numbers and how much we've done to increase efficiencies and reductions, I mean, I just don't know how we're going to continue to do the services that we provide that everyone knows and loves and appreciates in our city. If you look at surrounding communities, if we don't do these increases, one of the alternatives was having people pay for their own trash and refuse. And Reminderville pays $179 a year. And if they have anything that doesn't fit in the cans, they have to pay extra. The township pays $138.48 for trash. And their property taxes are significantly higher than what we are doing in the city. So again, I mean, I've heard from finance, I've sat in the finance meetings, even though I'm not on the committee. We go through this every year. I just, you know, people are saying that we need it, then when are we gonna do it? Because no time is the right time. And, you know, I'm sorry, but that's where I feel. I don't know how we're supposed to run a city when the we're so income tax driven and dependent, and we know that's going down. So in your own household, if you know that your income's down, you have to do something different. You have to cut your budget. You have to, you know, so.
Feed your family.
I'm sorry?
I said, or feed your family. You've got to figure out how you're going to do that.
Well, that's it. Feeding the family is the same thing as the city taking care of trash and the other things that we do. So we have to look at, you know, do we want to continue to provide the services that everyone knows and expects and appreciates for an increase? And as I said, just looking at Reminderville and the township, and I know other cities that pay, the increases that we're talking about are less than that. I mean, total, it's $49 one year on 100,000 and $77 a year in 2022. So again, I haven't heard anyone who's opposed really say, what is it that we can do different? It's easy to say, I don't want to make this hard decision, or it's not the right timing. Then what are we supposed to do? Sorry, I don't have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. McFerrin. It is 7 o'clock. I know we want to keep things moving forward. Mayor Yates, Mr. Maestros, any additional follow-up, and then we can conclude the finance.
Just briefly, I know I have spoken with all of council. I spoke with Ms. Doffer, Mr. Scafidi today. I know how they've felt regarding this decision. They were very gracious and listened to what I think is being proposed tonight as a compromise and an effort to help give us a better opportunity to still maintain our level of service for next year, and then moving into 2022. And I know this is a very hard decision. I mean, these have been some of the most challenging months that I've ever lived through. And I know it's not easy. I mean, some of the calls I've made, some of the long meetings I've had with department heads that are now operating with reduced staff and much slimmer budgets. I know this decision means a lot to them, and they understand the difficulty that council's having with it. So I want to thank all of council, because I know this has been something that you've all talked about, and you've worked on. You've looked at the numbers. You've done a ton of research. We've talked to residents, and you know, the bottom line, I think, is to, and the goal of all this is to protect what we have in terms of our services and the way that we take care of our residents this year, next year, and for years to come. So I know this is a very, very difficult decision, and I just appreciate council's work on it, and as well as our finance director and Mr. Maestros. It's not been an easy path. So with that, I know we're out of time, so I guess we can conclude.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Maestros, anything additional to add? You're muted, sir.
Nothing additional. I just want to thank council for taking the time. I know you guys have spent a tremendous amount of time discussing this. It's not something that just came up at the spur of the moment. And on behalf of all the employees, I mean, we certainly appreciate council taking a long look at this. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Maestros. So just to sum up briefly, because it is a little bit after 7 o'clock, if we rewind the clock to 2 weeks ago, I think it's important to note that there was legislation for a 4.9 mil property tax increase that was supposed to be on its first reading tonight. Everybody involved, everyone on the finance committee, the administration, the finance department, every member of council, we all kind of worked together. We pushed the pause button to allow everybody some time to work on some things to see if we could come to some consensus. It has been challenging and a lot of hard work, but I do appreciate everybody's opinion. And it was very important, I think, tonight for finance to hear from every member before we propose any potential legislation. That's all I'm going to say on that issue. Is there a motion or anything that finance wants to make this evening regarding this legislation?
Well, let's understand the timeline. If the city doesn't take action on this by July, you can't, right? It's if you do it in August, it's a year out. So in order to have the 2.4, 1.4 net in place, has to be enacted by the last meeting in July, which if we started now, you'd have 2 meetings in June and 1 meeting in July. Dave, could you confirm that with me? Or Sarah?
That's the correct timing of that. You would have 3 meetings left to read this.
Okay. All right. So at this time, I plan to make a motion that the Finance Committee recommends to Council that we have legislation prepared for our next meeting that would show 2.4 mils to be implemented for the 2021 tax year and 2.9 mils to be implemented in the 2022 tax year. Is there a second?
2.5.
You mean 2.5, Bill?
I apologize. My 9s and my 5s when I scribble look alike. I was wrong. I'll do it again. I make a motion that the Finance Committee recommends to Council that we prepare legislation for a 2.4 mil property tax to be implemented in the 2020 tax year to be collected in 2021, and a 2.5 mil property tax for the 2021 tax year to be collected in 2022. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Fury made the motion. I seconded.
So if this went through unamended, it would be a net 3.6 mil increase at the end of the second year. It would be a 1.4 mil increase net at the end of the first year. So,
Any discussion, Mr. Ballin, on the motion, or Mr. Fury?
no.
No, nothing further this evening.
I'd like to call roll on this just so everybody's perfectly clear. Mr. Ballin, how do you vote on Mr. Fury's motion?
Yes.
Mr. Fury, obviously, it's your motion, and I second it.
I'm voting yes.
I vote yes as well. So at this time, the motion passes out of Finance 3-0. Again, in the interest of time, I'd like to look at item 7 on the agenda. I apologize, I have it electronically here. I have to pull it up, which is comments or questions. Mr. Ballin, Mr. Fury.
Nothing further.
Item number 8, miscellaneous. Oh, Mr. Scafidi, you have something, sir? Yeah, you're muted, sir.
Sam, you're muted. You're still muted.
There you
Yeah,
go.
real quick, I guess my question is, why does that have to be on the same legislation? I mean, if it's not going to take effect till 2022, why can't we look at it then in 2021 and see what the state of affairs are for everybody then, and go forward with it in 2022? Why do we have to dirty it up? That, only in my opinion, may cause me to vote no on the whole thing, whereas I may go forward with 2021, but I'm not happy right now at 2022. Why does it have to be together? Or why does it even have to be now? We've got all next year. We've got till next June or July.
I'd like to weigh in on that too. Anything that can be decided later should be, when there's more clarity on the total impact of this pandemic. I mean, right now, we don't know what's going to happen. So in my opinion, nothing good can come from making a decision today that can be made in 6 months or a year or longer. But as time passes, we're going to learn more. So if we're already doing something that is as tough as all of you seem to agree that is on the residents, why are we going to make this all lumped into one right now?
And I'm not saying I'm going to vote no on it next year, but I'm going to certainly know a lot more about the state of affairs for everybody individually, for this virus, for the economy, for everything next year. Then I may vote yes again. But I probably at this stage of the game, and again, I'm a processor, I will probably vote no on this when it comes up. But I will review it as I do everything else, and I'll think about it and make my decision. That was my only question. Why it all had to be now.
Thank you, Mr. Scafidi. Ms. McPherson?
So initially, when this came up, there was a number that we were talking about from finance. It was a total number to do for 2021. So the idea of separating it part in 2021 and part in 2022 was to be sensitive that, it's a difficult time. And it's also because, it's something we've been talking about, you all have been talking about for how many years, way more longer than I've been on council. So if everyone's agreeing that we need this, then why aren't we doing what we need to do?
Because it's the wrong time. It's the
Because
wrong.
there's a pandemic.
You should have done it before. I've done it several times.
We would have, could have, Joanne. You weren't here.
I wasn't there, but you're the one that said that you would have, could have, should have. So
That's right. Yeah, we could do that all day long.
So we have a motion coming out of finance. It's going to go before council. It sounds like 3 readings. I'm sure there's going to be lots of discussion on it. I think that's where we are for this evening. I understand there are a lot of heated feelings on this. Again, I thank everybody for their input. The last item on the agenda would be our next meeting date. Sarah, if you'd be kind enough to confirm that it would be June 23rd, 2020 at 6 p.m. Hopefully that'll be an in-person meeting, depending on where things stand with the state of COVID.
Yes.
Okay, so with that, it is 7:12 p.m. I'm going to adjourn the Finance Committee meeting at this time. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Bellin just briefly so you can let everyone out there in Zoom world know what time you'd like to convene the caucus meeting. So.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Yeah, I'm. So we actually have to jump out of this Zoom meeting and get into another one. I'm going to do that right away. I imagine it'll take me a couple of minutes. If we can start by 7:15, I will start it, but I will make sure that everybody is there prior to beginning.
Thank you.
Sounds
you.
good.
Thank you.